All right, let's dig deeper into the New York Times reporting that we mentioned at the top of the show on House Republicans narrowing their sights in hopes of keeping an even one-seat majority and have begun to abandon GOP candidates, including incumbents who have fallen substantially behind in once competitive races. The report says a memo from the Republican Super PAC Congressional Leadership Fund circulated this week stating, quote, there are 20 races within 4 points that will determine the House majority, and CLF will keep working to win them. But the math is daunting, since Republicans hold between 60 and 70 competitive districts that are being seriously contested, and Democrats only need to flip 23 to win control. The Times writes, in a tactical retreat, Republican groups have already withdrawn some or all funding from a few embattled incumbents, mainly in suburbs where President Trump is unpopular, including Representatives Kevin Yoder of Kansas, Mike Coffman of Colorado, and Mike Bishop of Michigan. They have abandoned more than a half a dozen seats where Republican lawmakers are not running for re-election. On Wednesday, they cut loose at the Tucson, Arizona-based seat of Representative Martha McSally, who left to run for Senate. Joining us now, national political reporter for Axios, Jonathan Swan, and national political correspondent for NBC News and MSNBC, and author of the book, The Red and the Blue, the 1990s and the Birth of Political Tribalism. Steve Kornacki, The Rage, is with us. So, Joe, a lot of great guests to talk about what's going on with the Republicans.
Well, and here we are, less than a month out, a lot of cross currents in American politics. And Steve Kornacki, it seems right now, and I do mean right now, because in a week, the polls are sure to change as we move even further away from the Kavanaugh hearings. But right now, it seems to be a tale of two elections. You've got the Senate races that have tightened up. Republicans have taken the lead in places like Tennessee and Texas comfortably. But then you have the House races where you had House members who didn't talk that much about Kavanaugh in competitive districts because they were trying to win suburban voters over. There, it seems like the GOP is in retreat. How can you help us sort through these two different cross currents?
Yeah, because basically what you're describing there are almost two different Americas. You're talking about, Senate terrain that is heavily tilted towards Trump states, Tennessee, Texas. Trump won Tennessee by 26. Trump won Texas by 9 points. And those have become somewhat of battleground states in the Senate side. So on the House side, this is very interesting because you're talking about, in particular, when you get to these races where Republicans are looking at their financial commitment, you are talking about these suburban, more densely populated, close to major cities types of districts, in a lot of cases districts that voted for Hillary Clinton. I was just looking in the break here, just off the top of my head, I could run down a list of about 12 seats that look like they are in, at best, dire shape for Republicans in the House. And when you look at, Democrats need a net gain of 23 to pick up the chamber. And just, in about 2 minutes of sitting here looking at metro areas around the country, generally places where Clinton did well in 16, I can get Democrats more than halfway there in about 2 minutes. Now, where it gets a little more complicated with the House is, and I think this is the key, and this is what's going to end up deciding it, it's the more hybrid districts. They have a suburban metro portion to them, but they might also have more of an exurban rural portion, and that's where it almost becomes a test of energy between the two sides. And it's the one thing Republicans can hope for, that did Kavanaugh somehow give them energy in that more Trump portion of the district?
Well, and Jonathan, this is something that we've been talking about since the day after Donald Trump was elected. Everybody has. That the House of Representatives was going to be vulnerable because you had 23, 24, 25 seats that Hillary Clinton won, where Republicans were still in power there. You also, of course, had the redistricting in Pennsylvania. That map's changed. A couple of other maps have changed where suburban voters are given more power. The Brett Kavanaugh hearings, they may have played well for Republicans in parts of Arizona, in Tennessee, in Texas, but in these very districts that Democrats have to win, they probably got a little wind at their back because of what happened. If you just looked at the polling of the suburban voters, the suburban women, the very people they need to win over.
Yes, and the challenge the White House has had all along is that President Trump has wanted to barnstorm across the entire country. He has people on the outside who say, Mr. President, people like Corey Lewandowski, you are the greatest campaigner the world has ever seen. Every district needs you. You need to be everywhere. Trump obviously believes that some of these members don't want him anywhere near their districts, and they've quietly made that known to the White House. So the tension has been between Trump's desires to be everywhere and the reality that his presence in a district can energize those people that you just described. Yes, he energizes the Republican base, but he actually energizes those suburban women, college-educated voters who are giving Democrats a huge advantage in a lot of these districts.
Yeah, let's go back, Steve Kornacki. Let's look at one state where we got a new poll or two in, from Wisconsin. This is a state that Donald Trump won, that Hillary Clinton didn't even visit. Back in 2016, you look at some of the numbers there. The Democrats doing quite well. Tammy Baldwin comfortably ahead. And in a gubernatorial race that Scott Walker has won, there she's up by 14 points. In a gubernatorial race that Scott Walker has really won 3 times already. If you look at the recall election, that's a big 10-point lead. So you have these swing states, and I'd put Virginia on that list, Wisconsin, look at Florida, Indiana that Barack Obama won in 2008. I think you have races that Nevada, even Arizona, those races are going to go down to the wire for the most part. Tennessee, Texas, maybe not. Maybe those are all over. But we still have 7, 8, 9, 10 Senate races that are going to be up for grabs to the very end, aren't we?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you look in the Midwest, if you want to talk about a Senate race that's going to go down to the wire, Missouri, right? Claire McCaskill out there waiting to see how that, if there is an effect from Kavanaugh in that race. But yeah, I do think that the thinking has shifted big picture in the last week. I mean, I think about 10 days ago, before the sort of effect, the potential effect of Kavanaugh took hold, people were starting to tick up the Democrats' chances of getting not just the House, but the Senate. And people were starting to think that was getting close to, maybe like a 40% shot for them. I think that number in most people's minds has fallen down to like 10% or so in the last week or so based on these events. But on the House side, it just continues to be, there are so many opportunities on the map for Democrats. And one of the things you find in so many of these midterm elections these days is that in the end, you mentioned all those races that are supposedly within a couple points, they do tend to break one way. And if they do end up breaking in the Democrats' favor, that could still be a big win for them. But I think Republicans are looking at it right now and seeing at least a narrow chance of barely hanging on to the House, which is better than they've been thinking for a while.
All right, Steve Kornacki, author of The Red and the Blue. I know you have a plane to catch. Thanks for being on. Want to turn now.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.